Teenagers are injecting themselves to look better. Not in a doctor's office, not with a prescription, from a website with a credit card. No age verification, no medical supervision. Just a TikTok tutorial and a vial of something labeled for research use only. The substance is BPC-157, a synthetic peptide, never approved for human use, never tested in humans at the doses being injected, bought from vendors whose supply chains, according to blockchain data, previously supplied fentanyl precursors to drug cartels, and it is not fringe. TikTok's Peptide tag has 342,000 videos. In Q1 2026 alone, crypto flows to grey market peptide vendors jumped 159% in a single quarter. A May 2026 survey found that in one high school, 23 students knew at least 2 peers actively injecting peptides. This is not a subculture. This is a mass market. And behind it, a legitimate industry worth hundreds of billions is being built on the same trend. Hims and hers, Novo Nordisk, 100 biotech startups, all chasing the same customer that the grey market already owns. Today we explain what peptides are, why a generation is injecting them, who is making money from it, and why the answer to one regulatory question will determine whether this becomes the biggest healthcare opportunity of the decade or the largest youth health crisis since the opioid epidemic. Chapter 1. What are peptides? Peptides are short chains of amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. They occur naturally in the human body and act as signaling molecules. They tell cells what to do: produce more collagen, reduce inflammation, repair tissue, regulate hormones. The pharmaceutical industry has used peptides for decades. Insulin, the diabetes drug that keeps hundreds of millions of people alive, is a peptide. GLP-1 agonists, Ozempic, Wegovy, the drugs that caused the weight loss revolution, are peptides. The most successful drug launches in pharmaceutical history are peptides. What changed in the last 3 years is not the science. The science has been there for decades. What changed is access and culture. In 2026, injectable research peptides like BPC-157 and TB-500 exploded in popularity, going from niche biohacker protocol to mainstream curiosity. BPC-157 is a synthetic peptide originally developed to study gut healing. Studies in animals showed extraordinary results: accelerated wound healing, tissue repair, reduced inflammation. Human trials are limited. The FDA has not approved it for human use, and yet millions of people are injecting it. TB-500 is similar, originally studied for its role in tissue repair and regeneration. Animal studies are promising. Human safety data is minimal. FDA approval, non-existent. The grey market operates through a legal fiction. Websites sell these substances labeled for research use only, not for human consumption. Nobody believes this. The websites include injection tutorials. The products come in vials with dosing instructions. The research use only label is a legal shield, nothing more. And nobody is checking whether the buyer is 16 or 60. Chapter 2. The Looksmaxxing Economy. To understand why peptides exploded in 2025 and 2026, you need to understand the culture that adopted them. Looksmaxxing is an internet subculture built around one central obsession: maximizing your physical appearance through every available means. Diet, exercise, skincare, jawline exercises. Mewing, the practice of repositioning your tongue against the roof of your mouth to supposedly reshape your facial structure. And increasingly, peptides, hormones, and pharmaceutical substances obtained without prescription. The language of the community reveals its psychology. Ascending, moving up the physical attractiveness hierarchy. Mogging, dominating others through superior appearance. Looksmatching, finding a partner at your tier. The entire framework treats human beings as objects ranked by physical attributes and treats pharmaceutical intervention as the rational path to optimization. TikTok's peptide tag has accumulated 342,000 videos showing injection tutorials, dosing schedules, and stack recommendations. The financial average quadrupled almost overnight, surging to $9.9 million a month, with recent peak months clearing $10 million in crypto flows to grey market peptide vendors. This is not a small community of bodybuilders. This is mainstream youth culture. A May 2026 survey of 95 high school students found that 23 knew at least 2 peers actively using peptides, with 8 students knowing 5 or more users. The influencers driving this are not obscure. They have millions of followers. They are not advertising supplements. They are providing specific injection protocols for pharmaceutical-grade substances that have never been tested in humans at the doses being recommended. And they are making enormous amounts of money doing it. Chapter 3. The legitimate market. Here is where the story gets financially interesting. Because behind the grey market chaos, there is a legitimate industry undergoing an extraordinary transformation. GLP-1 peptides, the drugs that started as diabetes treatments and became the most in-demand weight loss medications in history, have normalized the idea of peptide therapy for hundreds of millions of people. After 3 years of short supply, GLP-1s like Ozempic are now widely available, and 3 GLP-1 pills have been released, including the Wegovy pill. The normalization of Ozempic did something the pharmaceutical industry could not have bought with a billion-dollar marketing campaign. It made injecting yourself with a peptide for aesthetic and health optimization completely mainstream. If your neighbor is on Ozempic, your doctor recommends it, and celebrities openly discuss it. The psychological barrier to other forms of peptide therapy collapses. Hims and Hers understood this before almost anyone else. The company built its entire business model on removing the friction between patients and treatments for stigmatized conditions. Hair loss, erectile dysfunction, weight loss, now peptide therapy. In 2025, Hims and Hers generated $2.35 billion in revenue, up 59% year-on-year, with over 2.5 million subscribers. The GLP-1 business drove much of that growth, and the FDA's removal of semaglutide from its shortage list created significant disruption. But the underlying insight that millions of people want legitimate, convenient, affordable access to pharmaceutical-grade optimization is not going away. It is accelerating. The cosmetic peptide market alone is projected to reach $434 million by 2035. That sounds modest until you realize it does not include therapeutic peptides, GLP-1s, or the grey market. The total addressable market for peptide-based health and appearance optimization is in the hundreds of billions. Chapter 4. The regulatory battle. The FDA is fighting a war on 2 fronts simultaneously, and it is losing both. On the grey market front, the for research use only loophole has created an essentially unregulated injectable drug market targeting teenagers. A Wellington school issued a formal warning to parents in April 2026 about peptides carrying significant potential for serious health effects. A New Zealand supplier admitted on record that enforcing age checks would hurt profitability. On-chain data link some of the industry's popular grey market vendors directly to Chinese chemical manufacturers who recently pivoted away from supplying fentanyl and amphetamine precursors to transnational drug cartels. Read that again. The companies supplying grey market peptides to teenagers on TikTok previously supplied fentanyl precursors to drug cartels. The supply chain is the same, only the product has changed. On the legitimate pharmaceutical front, the FDA is trying to navigate a political and commercial minefield. Compounding pharmacies, which produced affordable versions of GLP-1 drugs during the shortage period, are being forced to stop. But the patients who became dependent on affordable compounded semaglutide cannot afford Novo Nordisk's branded Wegovy at $1,300 per month. Hims & Hers launched generic semaglutide access in Canada through Apotex at $149 Canadian per month. The gap between $149 and $1,300 for the same molecule is not a pharmaceutical question. It is a political and regulatory question. And the answer will determine whether peptide therapy becomes accessible healthcare or remains a privilege of the wealthy, plus a grey market for everyone else. Chapter 5. The Investment Case. The peptide economy in 2026 creates investment opportunities across 3 distinct categories. The legitimate telehealth platforms. Hims & Hers is the most obvious public market vehicle. Despite the GLP-1 regulatory disruption, the company has 2.5 million subscribers, $2.35 billion in revenue, and a platform built for exactly the kind of personalized pharmaceutical access that the peptide market requires. The stock has been volatile. The underlying platform is real. The pharmaceutical manufacturers, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, the makers of branded GLP-1 drugs, are the largest direct beneficiaries of the peptide normalization trend. Both are developing next-generation peptide drugs across multiple therapeutic areas. Both trade at premiums that reflect genuine pipeline value. The picks and shovels. Peptide synthesis requires specialized chemistry and manufacturing. The companies that make peptide active pharmaceutical ingredients, particularly in North America and Europe, where regulatory standards provide competitive protection against Chinese manufacturers, are positioned to benefit regardless of which specific peptide drugs succeed commercially. The honest risk. The grey market creates regulatory and reputational risk for the entire sector. A major youth health crisis linked to contaminated grey market peptides could trigger aggressive FDA action that catches legitimate players in the crossfire. Hims & Hers operates in the same public consciousness space as the grey market, even though its products are legitimate and physician-supervised. A scandal in the grey market could damage legitimate telehealth valuations. A generation has decided that biological optimization is not cheating. It is strategy. The grey market is supplying them without oversight, without age verification, without quality control, and a legitimate industry worth hundreds of billions is being built on the same trend. Racing to capture the customer, the grey market already owns. The company that offers safe, affordable, accessible peptide therapy at scale will be one of the most valuable healthcare businesses of the next decade. The question is whether it gets there before the first major youth health crisis makes the front page everywhere. If you want to understand how to invest in the future of healthcare, check out my complete investing masterclass, link in the description.